Hello, Dr. Tanveer. Can, can you hear me? Please join audio. Dr. Jana, please contact ma'am and told him to join again. Left this meeting and join again. Yeah. Now,
Is it okay?
yes, ma'am. Yes. Now, okay. Thank you. Welcome, ma'am. Good evening to everyone present here in Facebook and YouTube Live. This is Rudranaran Das. Uh, take this privilege to warmly welcome you all to this Netaji Memorial International Lecture Series, an initiative towards think times and rethink episteme. Distinguished participants, partakers, it's a glorious moment to extend my warm wishes on behalf of Center for ADIVASI Research and Development, as this international lecture series is built with the intent of active and interactive learning and discussion, organized by Center for Adivasi Research and Development in collaboration with Ravenshaw University and NUJS Kolkata. On behalf of Center for Adivasi Research and Development, I want to convey my heartfelt gratitude to our patrons, Professor Sanjay Kumar Naik, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Ravenshaw University, and Professor Nirmal Kanti Chakravarti, Honorable Vice Chancellor, NUJS Kolkata. The convener of this largest virtual conference is eminent Indian historian, Professor Chandi Prasad Nanda, and Professor Srinivasulu NSG. Ladies and gentlemen, Center for Adivasi Research and Development is a leading research-oriented institution promoting ethnographic, empirical, and evidence-based research for engaging and addressing the challenges that 21st century globe is facing today. The prime agenda of this institution is to come up with potential policy solutions for social change while believing in the idea of debate, dialogue, and discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, uh, from this year, in the January 23rd January, Center for Adivasi Research and Development with Ravenshaw University and NUJS, celebrating the ideas and the contribution of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose to the India and Indian history. It gives me a tremendous contentment to introduce the most esteemed personality of today's symposia, Professor Syed Tanveer Nasreen ji. Uh, Tanveer ji will definitely throw light about the contributions of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and what is his ideas of patriotism and all this. So before inviting Professor Tanveer, I would like to introduce Professor Tanveer to our audiences. So Dr. Syed Tanveer Nasreen has been educated at the Presidency College, Jadavpur and Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has served the University of Burdon for the more than 2 decades. Before joining the Indian Council of Cultural Relations under Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, Professor Nasreen has traveled widely across the globe as a visiting scholar, later as a visiting professor at various universities, academic institutions, and think tanks on various aspects of gender and culture. These are her areas of specialization on area. Sorry for the interruption. So these are her areas of specialization on which she has also written extensively about these areas. So along with her services, the Department of History had also been associated with the Departments of Women Studies at the University of Burdon since its inception, first as coordinator and then as a professor in charge of 11 years from 2009 to 19. She had also served in several administrative capacities. Currently, she is the first secretary culture at the High Commission of India, Maldives, and director Indian Cultural Center. Dr. Nasreen is also a trained Bharatanatyam dancer and theater enthusiast. So welcome, Professor Nasreen to Netaji Memorial Lecture Series. And as we celebrating the ideas of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and the sense of patriotism, he um, the sense of patriotism and the legacy he place for our youth peoples and young minds. We are very much enthusiastic to listen you about the relevance of Netaji's ideas and his style of patriotic vision. So which will be definitely an eye-opening session for all of the students of post-graduations and degree students and our eminent audiences who join us from different universities and colleges. So with this note, I would like to stop here and invite Professor Tanveer to initiate her talk.
Namaskar. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much. Namaskar. And thank you, Dr. Vikram Keshari Jaina, Director, Center for Adivasi Research and Development, for inviting me to be part of this Netaji Memorial International Lecture Series. I am grateful to Ravenshaw University, Cuttack, and the National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata, who are joint organizers of this international lecture series. And I am immensely grateful to all of you for choosing me to speak on Netaji. I'm not sure how qualified I am to speak on him, but I'll try to speak on the relevance of Netaji and his patriotic spirit today. And I'm particularly honored because Subhash Chandra Bose is one of our strong politico-intellectual connects between Bengal and Odisha. So as someone from Bengal, I am deeply honored to be speaking on Subhash Chandra Bose on a platform which is from Odisha. Coming to my topic today, the story of the incredible life of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose is too well known for all of us to be repeated here. So I'm not going into the details of his life. I have rather noted some particular points for which he is relevant for everything that he did, but some particular points which I may be able to express and share with you, which make him relevant today. So in discussing my topic, relevance of Netaji and his patriotic spirit today, I shall mostly confine myself to his thought and his works between 1921 and 1921 and 1945. 1921 was when Netaji returned from England. And between 1921 and 1945, we also have to remember that of the 24 years of his life that I choose to focus on, he spent more than 14 years either in captivity or in exile. So this is the period that I choose to focus on, and the relevance of, this is the period that I choose to analyze the life, thought, and works of Netaji, which make him very, very relevant to our contemporary times. This was the time when he was pondering upon the multidimensional identity of India, still the undivided subcontinent, and was envisioning a future for the country that was to emerge as a post-colonial state. And if we try to look at the range of his thoughts, which varied from political to the socio-economic and cultural, and and his activities during the period, we can trace the trajectory of its evolution from the theoretical position to practical realities. Of course, his patriotic spirit, his burning zeal of love for the motherland dominates and forms the underlying spirit of all these thoughts. But with the farsightedness of a statesman and nation builder, he had envisaged programs for India's development at all levels, whether municipal or national, which included aspects of planning, industrial growth, gender equality, secularism, as well as the development of a common lingua franca for India. All of which continue to be very relevant discourses in our contemporary times today in India. In fact, in my personal statement dated 29 November, in my personal testament dated 29 November 1940 in Alternative Leadership, Bose professed to have, I quote, certain definite ideas on philosophic, social, economic, and political problems. So those were days when problems were not called challenges. And such a diverse area that he was working on, philosophic, social, economic, political, which he desired, I again quote from the article, to be amplified and worked out by the generation that follows us, unquote. Now, ironically, we are still working on most of them. If this was in 1940, in 2022, as an evolving democracy, as a flourishing democracy, we are still working on most of them. One of the major contributions of Netaji during his times, and what continues to be very relevant till today, in my opinion, is that despite the use of technology to get all sorts of cultural data we want regarding a country and its people from the fathomless world of internet, particularly because I am heading a cultural center myself, is the quest to grasp, I quote again, what is India in reality? I would refer to his Fundamental Problems of India, November 1944, from the essential writings of Subhash Chandra Bose. And during his stay in various European countries, he was appalled to see the general level of ignorance about India. India was largely regarded as the land of snake charmers, fakirs, and maharajas, or the land of mystics and philosophers, but there was no clear understanding of what the country, the culture, and its people are all about. So this gave the boost to the myth of colonial mission of civilizing and reforming. This is why Netaji encouraged local Indians to set up Indian associations to impart information on India's past, as well as dimensions of our freedom struggle. Sensitizing the rest of the world on Indian history and culture is one of the major areas till today. And that is one of the major legacies of Subhash Chandra Bose that we carry with us. The ideas of acculturation, so primary to the identity of the nation and the principles of democracy, Bose would argue, did not belong to the West. India of the past, I quote, India of the past is not dead. India of the past lives in the present and will live on in the future. In his lecture on democracy in India, Pune, 3rd May 1928, he referred to the Indian communities like the Khasis and their tradition of joint ownership of property as anticipating communism. Netaji, of course, sounded a bit over-enthusiastic when in his address at the Tokyo University in November 1944, he said that in modern India, there was no caste problem. This is in 1944. There was no caste problem since intermarriages and interchangeable professions had taken away the problems posed by caste distinctions. I would here like to underline these two words, intermarriages and interchangeable professions. In this statement, I would argue Netaji was looking forward and contemplating the India of his dreams. And if we are to estimate his relevance today, this goal and this aspiration of a national leader and Indian citizen continues to drive us to this day. that the culture of intermarriages and interchangeable professions will lead the country forward. In 1931, 13 years before this, addressing the All India, the Naujawan Bharat Sabha on 5th April at Karachi, he was contemplating upon an ideal of society where there would be complete economic emancipation, state control of the means of production and distribution of wealth, and social equality where there would be no castes, no depressed classes, no inequality between the sexes, either in social status or in law, and where women would be the equal partners of men. This is what Subhash Chandra Bose was saying in 1931. And I will take up this gender issue a little later, that he was proclaiming, he was dreaming of a country. He was contemplating a society of free India where there would be no inequality between the sexes, either in social status or in law. Again, please underline these 2 points, social status or in law, and where women would be the equal partners of men. As I said, I'll come back to it later. Once independence had been achieved, the freedom fighters who were, I quote him, morally prepared men and women would, from the nucleus of a centralized and well-disciplined All India party to be called the Samyavadi Sangh, which he mentioned in his lecture read in absentia at the Indian Political Conference on 10th June 1933, would be Samyavadi Sangha would be committed to Samya or equality as the ultimate goal. The leadership then would, in a, again, quote, scientific manner, engage in the task of national reconstruction. Free India will be a social and political democracy. This was the statement of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. He reiterated this several times, and this was also articulated in this lecture. And almost a century later, that is our greatest strength on which the country survives. And the legacy of, if you ask me about the legacy of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, I would say that the India will be a social and political democracy is one of the major legacies that we have carried forward from Netaji. Netaji was adequately impressed with the Nazi discipline during 1933-36 in the early phases of the 1930s, but he consequently revised his opinions. This is one major area for which he has been severely criticized, but he consequently revised his opinions significantly in the face of criticism by stalwarts like Rajani Pamdat. But he continued to be influenced by Kemal Ataturk. Netaji had time and again underlined the necessity of a strong central government within courts. Strong central government is what he was looking forward to. And if I understand that the topic today is relevance of Netaji today, relevance of Netaji and his patriotic spirit today, a strong central government is one of the legacies of his thoughts for India, which would be directed by a responsible party run on a democratic basis based on the leadership principle. The experience of the Congress in ministry making during 1937-39 was closely observed by him during his presidency. And it is significant that in 1939, at his presidential address at Tripuri, he was already speaking very forcefully of the need to, I quote, ruthlessly remove whatever corruption or weakness has entered our ranks, largely due to the lure of power. Now, this statement, ruthlessly remove whatever corruption or weakness has entered our ranks, largely due to the lure of power, is also extremely relevant for our times. Netaji's brief experience with the Calcutta municipality, first as its CEO, the Chief Executive Officer in 1923, under the leadership of Mayor Chittaranjan Das, and consequently as mayor himself in 1930, give him a direct experience of the task of civic administration. As mayor, he tried to infuse a program of civic improvement, encompassing all aspects of school, of education, housing, drainage, medical care, lighting, and roads. While jailed in Mandalay, Burma, he thought at great length about how to popularize rural home-based cottage industries, and simultaneously he was also thinking of the heavy industries, sharing detailed ideas of improving rural skills and making them commercially viable. While he was thinking of developing and popularizing rural home-based cottage industries, the idea of, well, the term empowerment had not been used at that time, but the idea of generating employment for women was always at the forefront of his thoughts. Exiled in Europe in 1933, Subhash Chandra Bose was facilitated by the mayor of Vienna to visit a range of municipal institutions, from electric, gas, and water supply works to drainage and sewage works. He also visited several chemical and armament factories in Czechoslovakia. So this European exposure in Austria and Czechoslovakia also broadened his ideas about the civic improvement and the possibilities, the scope of civic planning, and the execution of such plans in India. I would like to refer here to his lecture titled Municipal Socialism, addressed to the Bombay Corporation on 10th May 1938. While Gandhiji had apprehensions about modern industrialism, Netaji had firmly believed that India could not go back to the pre-industrial age, and all his exposure in the West, his experiences in the West, his evolution of his own thoughts and ideas led him to these progressive ideas of technological development and civic improvement. In 1938, as the president of the Haripura Congress, Netaji was instrumental in initiating the National Planning Committee in his ready partnership with Nehru as its chairman. The committee envisaged a systematic and organized exploitation of the country's natural resources and mineral wealth, with the classification of industries into heavy, medium, and cottage ones. So heavy, medium, and cottage cottage industries were within the idea of the National Planning Committee as early as 1938. As a part of this planning initiative, Netaji sought to promote scientific and technical research, recommended training programs abroad for students, and encouraged the formation of a permanent council for national research. At Haripura in 1938, he explicitly said, what was considered to be technologically the latest in 1938, I quote, such modern scientific contrivances as aeroplanes, telephones, radio, films, television, unquote. So the latest in technology, the latest in advancement, the latest in progress, and he would use the latest technology to knit together the scattered parts of the country, and felt the necessity of devising a common educational policy to infuse the population with a common ideal, which was inspired by the ideals of patriotism or nationalism. Now, trying to look at his patriotic nationalist spirit, I would like to draw your attention to his personal initiative and involvement in the recruitment drives, an ideal emulated still in India today. He personally visited the Annaberg camp in Germany in December 1941, where practically all the Indian prisoners of war had been assembled by the German authorities. Netaji appealed to their patriotism and tried to bring together people of different religions, caste, and class into the fabric of national identity, an experiment which he was later to carry to his Azad Hind initiative. So what was the national identity like? If we are talking of relevance of Netaji and his patriotic spirit today, this idea of his national identity also is very, very relevant, very important. The secular base of his national identity, the all-encompassing, inclusive identity of the national identity. One of his close associates, N.G. Ganpule, observed that it was crowned with success. Alexander Wirth, who was with the Special Division on India at the German Foreign Office, closely associated with Netaji, has been quoted by Abid Hassan Safrani in The Men from Imphal. This is the book, The Men from Imphal, where he said, I quote, I would quote this a little in details so that it is self-explanatory. Bose succeeded in a miniature form in Europe, what he did in a bigger way later in Southeast Asia with the Indian National Army, mainly to inspire every member with the idea of national unity, irrespective of any consideration for, this is very important, irrespective of any consideration for race, caste, religious and regional beliefs. In Hilversum, a base for the Azad Hind broadcasts, all of them, regardless of their provincial origin or caste, lived together under one roof, ate the same food under the same conditions. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, and Parsis all together worked for one and united free India. This is the India of his dreams. This is the India of our dreams that Netaji was trying to give a shape to. And that is what makes him very, very relevant in our times. This was regarded by J.K. Bhosle as a social revolution. And this was, in fact, in a land which was, I have already mentioned that he was already referring to intermarriages, although they were not really very common in the 1940s in India, but that they had already started was a very good indicator that was picked up by Netaji. And in a country that is directed by rules of commensality and rules of marriages and rules of social interaction, this marked a transition, a shift from orthodoxy, from conformism, from rules that were followed for generations, for ages, to modernity, or what we may call cosmopolitanism. So Subhash Bose, Netaji was in his way, in his own way, the harbinger of modernity, I would say. This cherished idea of nation building is what we emulate at all levels today. Another of his followers, Shahnawaz Khan, later recounted, I quote, I was hypnotized by his personality and his speeches. He placed the true picture of India before us, and for the first time in my life, I saw India through the eyes of an Indian. Netaji encouraged common participation in religious festivities, making it a public affair while keeping the observance of beliefs strictly private. So the festivities, the aspects of religious practice, the conscious divide between the private and the public was in his scheme of thought. And I would here quote Abid Hassan in his article, Netaji and the Indian Communal Question, which was published in Oracle in January 1979, where he testified that on Diwali, Muslim officers of the INA organized a feast, while on Eid, Hindus organized one for their Muslim colleagues. And this is the spirit that continues to encourage, continues to boost the morale of Indian citizens, the Indian army, till this day. There were carols for Christmas, And though there were very few Indian Christians in the regiment, women of the Rani Jhansi regiment organized a musical celebration on the occasion of Christmas as well. Netaji believed that the religious identities should be kept intact, while there should be informed tolerance for one another. This very specific understanding of the divide between the public and the private is a very modern trait in the thought of Netaji, which is a very relevant part of his identity and a very relevant part of what we have inherited from his thoughts in India today. The abolition of separate caste kitchens was a decisive step in this regard. However, most pragmatically, he also rejected the initiative to compose a common prayer for Indians of all regions and religions. He was decisively against the use of religious idiom as a tool or as a strategy for unifying people. And this farsightedness of Netaji is extremely relevant today. M.K. Durrani, in his Muslim Image of Bose, this is the title of the article, Muslim Image of Bose, in T.R. Sarin edited Forgotten Images, Reflections and Reminiscences of Subhash Chandra Bose, mentioned that Netaji encouraged Indians of different religions to use the separate congregational centers for prayers, use their separate religious institutions, the congregational centers for prayers, but while together to cherish unifying national sentiments. Such deep was his understanding of inclusive pluralism. Netaji might not have theorized this as inclusive pluralism, but what we understand today by inclusive pluralism, what we emulate and what we try to practice as inclusive pluralism is what had been explicated by Netaji during his times. He also made it a point to have Muslim officers in visible positions of importance in the INA structure to bring about a more meaningful cooperation. General G.K. Bhosle, in Reminiscences of Netaji, also mentioned that this inclusiveness made the Muslims in the INA feel that they were ambassadors working for their own country's interests, and Netaji had worked like, I quote, a wizard's wand on their confidence. So this was again another aspect of the inclusive pluralism. This was only a practical application of what he had ideologically explicated at Haripura in February 1938. The need to live and let live, a policy of complete non-interference in matters of conscience, religion, and culture, as well as of cultural autonomy for the different linguistic areas. That the, I quote, minority groups had nothing to fear in India winning her freedom, unquote, was a statement of great conviction that could only have come from someone like Netaji and makes him all the more relevant in Indian history of all times. The last point in the context of his relevance and patriotic spirit I would like to raise is the one I had mentioned towards the beginning. Four women wielded a tremendous impact on his life in different phases. His mother, Prabhavati Devi, his sister-in-law, wife of brother Sarat Chandra Bose, Vibhavati Devi, his wife, Emily Shankar, and Bashanti Devi, wife of Chittaranjan Das, whom he regarded as his foster mother. Bose had played considerable, had placed considerable importance on the position of women and sought to initiate measures by which they could be brought in the mainstream of the development agenda and process. The National Planning Committee had prepared a very comprehensive report on the position of women with this objective in mind. And is there a microphone on? If you could please switch it off. Yes. So the National Planning Committee had prepared a very comprehensive report on the position of women with this objective of with this objective in mind, to mainstream women. And as a gender researcher, you can understand that when we look at the sustainable development goals till today, gender equality and gender empowerment remain one of the major challenges of our times till now. Proceeding along the guidelines suggested in the Fundamental Rights Resolution adopted by the Karachi Congress in 1931, it spelled out in detail the existing social, economic, and legal obstacles to the achievement of equal status and opportunity, and advocated ameliorative measures. So in 1931, it was a little more than almost, if we consider the 1830s, definitely by the time by which women were introduced to institutional education. So a century of experience, and the different classes of Indian women were also being considered. And in his presidential address at the Surma Valley Student Conference at Sylhet in April 1929, he underlined the need to abolish socially backward customs like child marriage, seclusion of women, and the dowry system. Education and employment of women were rightly identified as steps to empowerment, though the term was not used in the report or in the address. Employment of women from the cottage industries as well to the topmost visible levels were perceived and executed by Netaji. The final report on the Women's Subcommittee proposed, among other things, important changes in law regarding property, inheritance, and marriage. While a significant part of it was achieved through the introduction of the Hindu Code Bill and the consequent acts in independent India, I would argue that a lot remains to be done in respect of the women of other communities in India today. Netaji's relevance is that he was the first to voice the demand and support for a change in personal laws. In his attempt at establishing gender equality, he created a separate cadre of women to be a part of his Bengal volunteers at the time of the Calcutta Congress in 1928. That about 200 women marching in military uniform in Kolkata in the 1920s was not an ordinary sight. It shocked the public sentiment that was used to seeing women as very docile, very submissive, and not 200 women in military uniform marching on the road in Kolkata was something that was unimaginable to the quote-unquote Bhadro Babu mind of the 1920s in 1928. But perhaps, as I understand, Netaji was trying to shake the sensibilities, the conventional sensibilities, like he did when he introduced the common kitchen and abolished the idea of caste kitchen. The visual impact of 200 women in military uniform marching on the Kolkata streets would have been another remarkable, visible shift from the conventionalism to modernity in the assessment of Indian women. But by giving women this visibility and setting a visible purpose for women in the eyes of the onlookers, he was actually charting a roadmap for the engagement of women in public spaces. This experiment was further expanded in 1943 to launch a plan for a more ambitious and large-scale involvement of women in a nationalist military exercise directed from outside India. The Rani of Jhansi Regiment of the Indian National Army and the examples of contributions of women like Captain Lakshmi Sehgal continued to live in the hearts of the Indian mind and continue to ignite the imagination of generations of women who chose to join the Indian Army post 1947, who tried to explore the hitherto unexplored areas of the Indian Navy, the Indian Air Force, the Indian Army. The first seed that was sown, the first light that enlightened later generations of women were done by Netaji. And these carried the legacy of Netaji and his patriotic spirit to our times. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful deliberation over Netaji's ideas. You rightly mentioned several aspects of Netaji's vision and his role for Indian independence. Now, I would like to invite the Director of Center for ADIVASI Research and Development, Dr. Jena, to make a conversation with Dr. Nasreen.
Thank you so much, madam. This is glad to announce that you accept our invitation and giving a very fantastic lecture, in particular this Netaji's International Memorial Talk. Madam, you highlighted so much very anxious and co-anxious kind of information related to Netaji's contribution in freedom struggle of India. And you rightly picked out so many points which appropriate Netaji as a great son of the soil and privileged one of the greatest freedom fighters of India and national icon, national hero, what kind of word we can use. At the same time, I would like to know some brief informations about you when you talked about Netaji's paradoxical framework and his journey towards 1921 to 1945. In between, madam, I would like to know in 1928 to 1910, the candidate of Gandhi in Indian National Congress.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you after you said I would like to know. Can you please repeat?
Yes, madam. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, ma'am. In 1928, after beating the candidate of Gandhi in Indian National Congress, why Bose has keen interested to join as a mayor of Kolkata? What coincidence and what the insight or what cover story has been made not be stressful open yet in India? One great icon and great leader of this country, why he interested to join as the simple mayor of Kolkata? As reported earlier, reported said it's only because of he interested to deal with Tata to build up this particular Howrah bridge. What is your concerns, madam?
Thank you for the excellent question, a very intriguing question. I'm not sure. See, first, let me admit that I have I am not a Netaji researcher. I have read expansively on Netaji, but I am not a Netaji researcher. If you ask this question from my understanding of what I have read about Netaji and his leanings, I would say that the influence of Chittaranjan Das on him was very profound. And that was one of the major reasons why he chose to focus on Bengal politics at one point of time. Secondly, his interest in the Bengal politics was one major area that would have given him a better understanding, a better ground to negotiate with national politics, could have been. And third is, of course, a first-hand dealing of, as I said, as we were discussing the relevance of Netaji and his patriotic spirit, his first-hand experience of dealing with civic administration as a mayor would also have enriched him. I think all these considerations went together in his decision to take up the post of mayor in Kolkata. And the position of mayor in Kolkata, as you said, that he was emerging and had already emerged as a national leader. Why did he go back to become the mayor of Kolkata? Kolkata being a very important center of national politics, I would think that these three factors were very important. The influence of Syed Das, the influence of Kolkata, the role of Kolkata, the role of Bengal in national politics, and also perhaps his desire to get a first-hand experience of civic administration as mayor of Kolkata.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much. My second question for you, madam, today's night. Again, 1938, when Bose beaten again the candidature of Gandhi in Indian National Congress. Out of he organizing or mobilizing the national movement, he went to Japan. He met to Hitler at a time in German. Why not he is interested in particular occupying India? You rightly pointed out he is very one of the most significant leader of national freedom struggle, and his contribution in particular mapping and collecting the women leadership in a critical point of time when we are emerging as a national freedom struggler country. We don't have anything, even nationalism growth. Netaji's contribution is immensely satisfactory, and we can give a long credit to him about nationalism growth, because he wandering from north to south and south to north and east to west, west to east. What is your assumptions and what is your source of knowledge, madam? What you do say about this particular topic?
This is again correct. This is again
yes,
a very speculative area of Netaji research as to why he went out of India to collaborate with Japan and Germany. But understanding Netaji, he was actually trying to bring the Indian situation to the global fore. This is what we would call internationalizing Indian politics. Because as I said in the beginning, see, I didn't want to sound controversial, which is why I focused on culture alone, that he encouraged people to, Indians to form Indian cultural communities, Indian associations, to disseminate the knowledge about India's past, India's present, Indian culture, etc. But at the same time, as far as I understand, if you ask me, he had this interest of internationalizing, sensitizing the international community on the nature of British colonialism in India.
thank you, madam. Thank you so much, and thank you so much again, once again, for your very wonderful deliberation about the cultural, socio-economic aspects of India, and during particular the leadership of Netaji. Now I would like to invite Rudranaran to go for a formal vote of thanks. Thank you so much, madam, and looking forward for future engagements. Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.
It's always an honor to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jaina. And thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful time and beautiful deliberation about Netaji's ideas. And you rightly said all the aspects. As you mentioned that you are not a researcher on Netaji, but you are a serious reader of Netaji. So we are very much happy to have you in Netaji Memorial Lecture Series. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. Now I'd like to thank all the authority of Ravenshaw University and NUJS Kolkata for their institutional support to Center for ADIVASI Research and Development. And I would like to thank the director, Dr. Vikram Kesari Jena, and Our patrons, Professor Nirmal Kanti Chakraborty and Professor Sanjay Kumar Naik, and our conveners, Professor Chandi Prasad Nanda and Professor Srinivas Luene, guidance to organize such a intellectual gathering like this. And I'd like to thank all our audiences who are watching us live in Facebook and YouTube. Uh, Continuously from 2 years, they are connected with us. Thank you all participants, and thank you all the members of Center for Adivasi Research and Development, all the media personnel who cover us regularly in printed and electronics media. Thank you everyone for joining this wonderful session. Thank you, ma'am, once again, and
Thank you, ma'am.
let us conclude this.
Thank you so much, and I'd look forward to more engagements with you in future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you,
you, madam. Namaste.
Definitely.
Namaste, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.